2020 has been a heck of a year. Sure, a lot of bad stuff happened, but I did start my YouTube channel. Plus, being home constantly really gave me the time to play an unhealthy amount of video games. So in standard YouTuber fashion, the end of the year means a Game of the Year list. But since I'm not just every other YouTuber, I'm going to be doing things slightly differently. My top 10 list is actually 2 top 5 lists. Since I play so many games from my backlog, almost all of the games I played this year didn't actually release in 2020. So instead, I made a second list with the 5 best games I played this year that didn't actually release this year. If you don't like that, I don't really care. Okay, it's my channel. I'm gonna do what I want. You want something different, go make that video. I don't know why we keep having these discussions. To add to the list of complaints that I know you're all gonna have, I didn't play every game that released this year. So I apologize in advance for hurting your feelings because The Last of Us, or Ghost of Tsushima, or Spider-Man, Miles Morales, or whatever other game that you enjoy that isn't on my list isn't on my list. Let me know in the comments all the games that I didn't list or that I put out of order. And before we get started, as always, please like the video, subscribe to the channel so you can catch everything as soon as I put it out, ring the bell. And if you actually want to see me play these games, you can always follow me on Twitch. It's a lot of fun. Now on to the lists. Ys 8. This is a game that caught me completely by surprise. I'd actually never played any of the games in the series before, and was really only convinced to try this one after a plethora of positive comments in a sale thread for the game. The game is a fairly standard action RPG that sees you exploring a mysterious island, traveling through time, and stopping the destruction of the universe. You know, standard RPG stuff. And while the combat isn't the deepest, and the story isn't necessarily groundbreaking, the overall gameplay loop is extremely engaging and fun. I really enjoyed playing the game, exploring the island, murdering giant dinosaurs, and giving a lot of the games I play, that is actually way more than enough to earn Ys 8 a spot on my list. 2020 brought with it a lot of surprises. Many things happened this year that none of us expected. Interestingly enough, for me, the most unexpected thing of this year was Animal Crossing New Horizons. I hate games like this. There's no story, there's no narrative, there's no stakes, there's just, crafting? Ugh. That said, I put nearly 100 hours into my dumb little island. Decorating my house, making this cool little Zen garden area, talking to villagers. Some of the highlights of my actual year, like my real life, were watching fireworks, trick-or-treating, having a birthday party thrown for me by some of my villagers. I know a lot of people, fans of the series, say that this one is a little more bare bones than some of the others. I can't comment to that because this is really the only one I've played. And yes, I have not been playing it as seriously for the last few months, but through it all, Animal Crossing New Horizons taught me that it is sometimes okay to really lose yourself in a fake world, kick back, relax, and enjoy the island life. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle is a game really no one saw coming. It's an XCOM-like turn-based strategy game starring Mario and the Rabbids. It made quite the wave when it was first announced at E3 a couple years ago. I actually pre-ordered the damn thing and never really got around to playing it until this year. And I hate myself for that. This game has it all. Engaging strategy, a vibrant, colorful world to explore, and Mario. I will say the difficulty curve was a little flat outside of boss battles and a couple stages here and there, but there are a lot of challenge levels outside of the main story to make up for that. I do wish there was a little more incentive for swapping around your party, as mine remained fairly static throughout most of the playthrough. But I will say the different characters and the different weapon types available to them do allow for some interesting combinations. I really enjoyed the more simplified cover mechanics because it meant there was no chance of having a 95% chance to hit and still missing. It's either always 100 or 50% based on how much cover the enemy is behind. And I think that's a positive for the game, removing a lot of those unfair feelings that you can feel playing XCOM. Once I picked the game up this year, I really couldn't put it down until I had beaten it, and fans of the genre are doing themselves a huge disservice if they're dismissing this game as a cheap knockoff. I love Picross. If you watch my review video of Murder by Numbers, you already know that. I love puzzles, I play puzzle games, probably more than any other type of game. You know, because I don't really enjoy relaxing when I play video games. I enjoy straining my mind and driving myself insane, rushing my whole body towards an early death. Speaking of death, this game actually has a pretty solid murder mystery visual novel wrapped around it. The two genres mesh perfectly, and the game does a great job of balancing both out. I really enjoyed playing through this game so much, and I think anyone else will as well. If you need more convincing, go check out my review video for it. Ni no Kuni was one of the most engaging worlds and stories in an RPG that I've ever experienced. As a longtime fan of Studio Ghibli, I can't get enough of this game's visuals, and the story was effectively told and a true joy to play through. Unfortunately, the combat AI was horrendous, and I almost rage quit the game a couple of times in a few places because of how bad that was. Also, for Pokemon Clone, I didn't really feel much urge to catch them all. But ultimately, in spite of all these gripes, pale in comparison to the game's overall presentation, and it's a game I really can't help but look back fondly on. I don't think anybody expected Doom 2016 back when it first came out. It hit the scene like a demon out of hell and reminded us that shooters can still be brutal, arcadey fun. Doom Eternal took that previous game and turned everything up to 11. More movement abilities, more demons, more glory kills. Eternal nearly perfected the Doom recipe. Now, while it still has that old school feel of Doom, the devs really did make a point in this game, especially at the higher difficulties, to make sure you're using your weapons correctly and effectively. Ammo is arguably a little scarcer than maybe it should be, but each enemy has specific weaknesses that you need to be aware of, requiring you to switch to those specific weapons to take them down. Personally, I thought it was a welcome addition. Some fights did feel a little too skewed towards this tactical approach, requiring a few deaths before you could kind of figure it out. There were some times where I felt like, I'm Doom Guy. I just want to mindlessly, brutally murder demons, not plan out my attack. Negatives aside, this game is as near to FPS perfection as I've seen in a long time, and it's a game any shooter fan must play. Gorogoa blew my mind. Period. It was such a wonderful, joyous experience. Discovering the game's mechanics and solving its puzzles did not get old. Part of that due to the game only taking about 90 minutes, but the rest is due to its genius presentation and execution. Much like I said in my review of the game, I really don't want to say too much more to spoil anything about this game, other than to say that everyone should experience this game and do it as blindly as they can. Because a lot of the game's wonder does come from discovering how it works, and work it does. Controversy aside, Cyberpunk is awesome. CD Projekt Red have built an immense world, and the game is so immersive, especially that intro. It just grabs you and takes you. The narratives are engaging, the characters are fully fleshed out, wonderful voice acting. It's all presented so good that you really don't even notice how average the mechanics and the rest of the game is. Cyberpunk takes games like Fallout 4 or The Outer Worlds and elevates them with a truly lived-in world. No game world has really pulled me in as effectively as Cyberpunk. The soundtrack slaps harder than my father, making gunfights that much more intense, or just driving around the city that much more enjoyable. I do have some minor complaints with the game that did hold it back from being number one on this list, the largest being the lack of speech skills in the game. Especially with this whole character background thing. It's a nice idea, but there's such a disconnect between who your character is in the first 30 minutes of the story and then who you are once you get through that background parts that it almost detracted from the role-playing for me. Personally, I picked the Corpo person, and I thought that I was going to have this awesome speech build. You know, I'm a CEO, executive guy, and I'm just going to talk my way out of any situation, talk my way back to the top. But there's no speech skills, and after you do you start as, again, like the head of this corporation, but then by the end of that little playthrough, you're the same nobody as everybody else would be with the other backgrounds. The game also does fall into a lot of the same pitfalls that other open world RPG games do. You know, you enter a new area and your phone's immediately ringing with people offering you jobs and stuff. Driving is average at best and garbage at worst, and there are a lot of bugs and glitches. Unlike other people, though, I don't think I set the bar astronomically high for this game. I mean, The Witcher 3 is one of my favorite games, and again, it's because of the story and characters. If you look at the combat in The Witcher 3, or the skills, the perks, the gear, it's not that great either. That game is really carried by its narrative experience, and Cyberpunk is no different. It's so solid. I wasn't expecting groundbreaking gameplay, and I got exactly what I expected from it. It's a solid enough RPG first-person shooter type game. It's better than Fallout. It's better than The Outer Worlds. It actually plays smoothly. And what more could you really ask for? Solid gameplay, an incredible world, incredible stories, a great setting. Cyberpunk is a great game. I expected Fallout, but with actually good world building, narrative, and characters, and I think I got more than I expected. Now, speaking of narratives, holy lord, this game takes the absolute cake. Disco Elysium is essentially a D&D campaign, but instead of fighting goblins or haggling with wizards, you're fighting with the shattered fragments of your personality. There is so much dialogue in this game, and all of it is outstanding. There's so many characters to talk to, areas to explore, and facets of your own character's mind to understand. It really can be overwhelming at times, and there is a lot of text to read, but it's all worth it. It allows for multiple playthroughs because you can try different approaches, talking to different people, doing different things, different builds of your own character. Honestly, you're probably going to hear me talking about this game in a similar position next year after they release the fully voiced Ultimate Edition or whatever it's called, because I am 100% playing through this game again, and that 100% counts as a 2021 release. So expect to see more Disco Elysium here on the channel. This game is awesome. The original Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii was an absolute triumph. A huge world with engaging combat, lovable characters with crazy accents, and an epic story. It really does have it all. The remaster is all that and so much more. It looks great, it sounds great, and thanks to the Switch, you can play it anywhere. Playing through this game again on the Switch was such a joy. It felt like a new experience. And the additional epilogue story included is just icing on the cake. Yes, most of the side quests are kind of bland collector killathons, but that's kind of what they were going for. The game's essentially a single-player MMO, but the main narrative, the story, is so good. And all that side stuff is really optional. it's not something you have to do. You don't have to really grind in this game. There's huge open areas to explore. They all have such diverse and unique presentations. The different characters, the different races in the game. Honestly, the original was already one of my top games of all time. And the remaster for the Switch is more than a worthy replacement. So that's that. My top games of the year. What do you think? I'm sure you disagree with a lot of them. Well, let me know in the comments below what your favorite games this year were, and what favorite games that you played for the first time this year were. This is the beauty of multiple lists. You can have lists on lists on lists. So let me see your lists in the comments below. Excited to see what is to come for this channel in the next year. Thank you guys so much for your support in 2020. I look forward to the year ahead. I think it's going to be great. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, pop the champagne, whatever else you do. I hope you guys have a great new year, and I will see you all in the next video.